To begin, I'm going to go through some of the historical data very quickly just so that we set the context for what will follow. Tyson's Corner in 1946 or something like that. And you will note that above the Coca-Cola sign on the store it says Tyson's store or whatever it says. But Mayo Stuntz, who was the historian in the county, many of you will remember Mayo, always claimed that that sign was changed much later. Mr. Smith had purchased the property and the store from Mr. Tyson and never bothered to change the sign, or we could have been Smith's Corner today. But ultimately the sign was changed, as you can see. I think that's the intersection of what's now Route 7 and 123. Clearly a need for Metro there. You can look at the population growth in the county over the period of time, 50 years, 1964, 2014, pretty steady growth. That trend line is expected to continue, particularly here in Tyson's Corner, where there's so many residential units coming online. The community is not only growing, but it's becoming increasingly diverse. As far back as 1960, you can see that the community was 92% Caucasian, and the balance of 8% was split between African American and Hispanic and other people. Today, we are on the cusp of becoming a community that is a majority of minorities. So just the white population by itself is now 51%, and we're just about to cross that line where it will be less than 50%. The same thing has happened in the public school system. You can see the numbers there. In the United States, the federal government recognizes 196 countries around the world. 192 of them have representatives at the United Nations. Our public school system has all 196 countries represented in it. And that exacerbates the cost of public services, not just education, but that kind of diverse community exacerbates the cost of providing human services and police and fire protection. And it underscores the need to bring additional businesses into the community to help offset the cost of those public services, as these four gentlemen will explain to you shortly. The diversity of the public school system. And we've become a job center. We are now approaching the number of jobs in Washington, D.C. We are in excess of the number of jobs of every other community in the region. We run about 35 to 40% of all the job growth in the region and have for more than a decade, year over year. The office space has grown accordingly. We're not going to show you the amount of office space that's not in use at present, but it is around 20 million square feet on this base of 116 million. There's another 10 million vacant in Arlington. There's another 5 million vacant throughout the rest of Northern Virginia. So the competition has really heated up, and I'm sure you'll hear some comments from our speakers that will relate to this chart. Business community is also diversifying, not just with minority-owned businesses, but foreign-owned businesses. If you look at any list of businesses that are not pure mainstream businesses, you will see Fairfax County's companies predominate that list, whether it's the African American owned and operated businesses that are on the list in Black Enterprise magazine, or Hispanic Business magazine, or Asian American lists, women owned businesses. We predominate in all of those. Clearly as a rising tide lifting all ships. This is what these gentlemen caused to happen many, many years ago, and others. And the result has been that the tax rate per $100 of assessed value for real estate, both commercial and residential, has declined dramatically to the point where we are at $1.09 now, but able to provide high quality, quantity of public services over a wide breadth of functions and at a lower tax rate, as you see. Additionally, personal wealth has grown in the community. This region, the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area, has 6 of the top 10 median family income communities in the country, Fairfax County being second, Loudoun County is first because everybody in Loudoun County works in Fairfax and takes their income back to Loudoun and gets taxed. This, I don't know what I did there, but you can see almost all of the primary logos of our major businesses that have been here. This didn't happen overnight, but everything that you have seen here, all the growth, all the wealth, all the jobs, the numbers of companies, the diversification of our communities and our businesses are all the result of processes and plans that were put in place and initially implemented by the four people you're going to hear from this morning or this afternoon. Well, you'll have to take my word for the rest of the chart. It's really good stuff. I can't seem to. Is there somebody that can, Obed? You're going to do it left-handed, maybe. Oh, look at you. Didn't go away, but we did get a neat green light out of it. There we go. So, thank you. I'm going to, thanks. I'm going to introduce the following four gentlemen and ask them to come up. And when we are all seated, then I'll give you a formal introduction for each of the four and we'll begin the program. First speaker is Till Hazel. Mr. Hazel, if you would like to come up, please. Till Hazel, and several years ago, still dapper, the ever dapper Till Hazel. He will speak first. Our second speaker will be Earl Williams. Earl looks the exact same today as he did then. Our third speaker will be Sid Dewberry. Sid looks just like he did as long as I've known him. Mr. Dewberry, thank you. And Jay Lambert, who always looked like Jay Lambert. So gentlemen, thank you so much for coming, and I will now make some formal introductions. As I said, our first speaker will be Till Hazel. Till is properly credited with being the initial developer, having the initial vision that developed areas in the county like Tyson's Corner, Fair Lakes, Burke Center, other areas of the county. Till was, some of you will know, but not all of you will know that Till is an attorney. Harvard Law. It's not George Mason, but it's supposed to be pretty good. Harvard Law was a county judge at one point, I think, and has been an ardent supporter of the institutions that we enjoy in the community today and that we as the Economic Development Authority market, including everything from George Mason University to Fairfax Symphony Orchestra and a lot of things in between. Earl Williams was the chairman, CEO of BDM Corporation, one of the initial government contractor in Fairfax County, one of the initial government companies in the county. Earl had a background in economic development because, if I'm not mistaken, you brought the company here from El Paso, which is a double win. You get to come to Virginia and you get to leave El Paso. No. Earl, probably his greatest claim to fame was that he served as the chairman of the Economic Development Authority. Yep. And ran for governor once. I think that was the other thing I was going to mention. Jay Lambert was county executive from, I believe, 1980 to 1990. He grew up in the region, started as a draftsman and worked his way up to county executive. One year in the mid-'80s, Jay was named the County Executive of the Year for the entire United States, which is an extraordinary accomplishment. It was Jay, too often we hear today people tell us, companies we're dealing with tell us that, dealing with the county, sometimes they start with no. It always seems to get to no somehow, but usually you start with no. Jay's reputation was that if you brought him a good idea, he would get to yes. That might not be the way you brought it in, but he would find a way to make good things happen, and we need more of that. Sid Dewberries, a civil engineer, I think George Washington University. Sid's a native Virginian. He was also very engaged at George Mason University, served as rector. Started the company in 1959? 56. So nearly 60 years of company existence, become very successful. Wrote some of the initial handbooks that engineering students now use in classrooms. Started the Surveyors and Engineering Institute, which I believe he was the initial chairman for. And Sid is still actively involved in the ongoing day-to-day management of his company, although I think Dottie actually runs the place. So with that very briefest of introduction, I will tell you one last thing before I hand this over to Till. When I first came to the Economic Development Authority, Chuck Gullidge, Earl's successor as the chairman, Chuck Gullidge was chairman. He was the CEO at Dynalectron at the time, which became DynCorp. And Chuck told me that I needed to go and visit with 8 people. And those 8 people, he gave me a list of names. He said 1, 2, 3, 8. And he said, unless you get these 8 people, then nothing's going to happen. And that list included George Johnson at George Mason University, Dick Ernst at the community college, Jack Harity, who was chairman of the Board of Supervisors, and Martha Panino, who was the vice chairman. And these 4 gentlemen. And he told me, Chuck told me that, I expressed to him a sort of a surprise that in a community of 500,000 people, that there were only 4 leaders, or 8 leaders rather, and visionaries. And Chuck was, as he always was right. He said, without these guys, nothing will happen. So, and I asked him, what if I just had one? He said, you have one, you have them all. And in fact, Chuck was right, as he always was. So what you're seeing in front of you is a great deal of history, and what you're going to listen to this afternoon is the historical context for what we do today and the basis for what we're marketing in Fairfax County today. Till Hazel.